He was just a single dad in 17E, until the intercom asked, terrified, any fighter pilot on board. From the moment the plane doors sealed shut and the engines began their steady roar, Michael Turner thought it would be just another flight. Uneventful, ordinary, maybe even restful if his daughter Emma fell asleep. He never liked flying, not because he was afraid, but because it always stirred memories he had worked so hard to bury. That morning, sitting in seat 17E with his little girl's head resting against his arm, Michael looked every bit the tired single dad simply trying to get home. No one around him would have guessed that behind those quiet brown eyes and worn hands was a man who once lived in the sky, a man who had walked away from the very thing that defined him. The first hour of the flight passed quietly. Emma was coloring in her little book, occasionally showing him her drawings while Michael read a battered paperback. He looked like any other parent balancing fatherhood with exhaustion. But then, midway through the flight, everything changed. The intercom crackled. At first, the captain's voice was calm, but then came words that made the air in the cabin freeze. "Ladies and gentlemen, if there is any fighter pilot on board, please make yourself known to the crew immediately. This is urgent." Gasps filled the cabin. Heads turned. A ripple of fear spread through the passengers. Someone dropped a cup of coffee. Emma gripped her father's arm tightly. Michael felt the weight of the moment crash into him like a tidal wave. He knew what this meant. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The flight attendants rushed down the aisles, scanning faces, whispering to one another. Michael's heart pounded. For a moment, he thought about staying silent. It had been years since he left the Air Force. Years since he climbed out of the cockpit for the last time, broken by the tragedy of losing his wife, left to raise their daughter alone. He had promised Emma that his flying days were behind him. That life of danger and split-second decisions was over. But then he looked at her. Her wide eyes were filled with fear, trust, and innocence. He knew in that instant he didn't have the luxury of being just a single dad anymore. Not today. He raised his hand slowly. "I was a fighter pilot," he said, his voice steady but low. The flight attendant's eyes widened. "Sir, come with me, quickly." Michael stood, kissed Emma's forehead, and whispered, "Stay here, sweetheart. Daddy has to help." She clutched his sleeve. "Don't go," she whispered. His heart cracked, but he forced a smile. "I'll come back. I promise." They hurried him toward the cockpit. The whispers followed. "A fighter pilot? There's a fighter pilot here." The intercom had said it with such terror, as though lives depended on it, and they did. Inside the cockpit, Michael was hit with the grim reality. The captain, pale and sweating, explained the crisis. The co-pilot had collapsed suddenly, unconscious. Medical help was being attempted, but he wasn't waking up. Worse, air traffic control had just relayed something unthinkable. A small rogue aircraft had been spotted on a collision course near their path. It wasn't responding to signals. The captain needed tactical knowledge, someone who had trained for intercept scenarios. Someone like Michael. Michael's hands trembled as he slipped into the spare seat. Memories rushing back. Training missions, dogfights, emergency landings. His body remembered what his mind had tried to forget. He guided the captain, talked him through maneuvers, and even took partial control. His voice, calm and commanding, began to steady the panicked crew. Back in the cabin, Emma sat clutching her stuffed bear, listening to muffled voices through the door. She remembered the bedtime stories her dad used to tell her. Not about princesses, but about the sky. Stories of courage, of facing fear when others could not. She finally understood those stories weren't just tales. They were his life. As the rogue aircraft came closer on the radar, the tension rose to unbearable heights. The passengers were praying, crying, gripping hands. Michael's voice, firm but reassuring, echoed in the cockpit as he relayed instructions. He wasn't flying a jet, but his knowledge gave the captain the precision needed to avoid disaster. Minute by minute, they adjusted course, bought time, and coordinated with ground control. Then came the critical moment. The rogue plane veered dangerously close, alarms blaring. Michael's instincts took over. He shouted commands, guiding a sharp, evasive maneuver that made the aircraft shudder. Passengers screamed, but it worked. The rogue plane missed them by seconds, passing into the night sky harmlessly. Silence fell. Then applause erupted in the cabin. Strangers hugged each other, tears streaming down their faces. The flight attendants clasped their hands in relief, and Emma stood on her seat, eyes wide, as the door opened and her father stepped out. He wasn't just the tired man from 17E anymore. To every soul on that plane, he was a hero. But to Emma, he was simply Dad, the man who kept his promise and came back. She ran into his arms and he held her tight, whispering, "It's okay. We're safe." By the time the plane landed, word had already spread. News outlets were waiting. People wanted to know who he was, why he had stepped forward. But Michael wasn't looking for recognition. He only wanted to take his daughter home. Later that night, as they sat in their quiet living room, Emma asked, "Daddy, why did you stop being a pilot?" Michael paused, the weight of old grief heavy on his chest. "Because I wanted to be here for you. Flying cost me a lot, sweetheart. I lost your mom when I was still in the skies, and I couldn't risk losing you too." Emma looked at him, her eyes shining with pride. "But today, you saved everyone. Just like in your stories." Michael felt something shift inside him. For years he had buried his identity, ashamed of the past, afraid of reliving it. But today reminded him that who he was and what he had done still mattered. Not because of the uniform, not because of the glory, but because when the world called, he answered. He kissed Emma's forehead and whispered, "Maybe I can't stop being a pilot. It's a part of me. But the most important mission I'll ever have is being your dad." And in that moment, he realized something powerful. Life doesn't erase who you were. It weaves it into who you are today. He wasn't just a single dad in seat 17E. He was a protector, a father, and when it mattered most, still a pilot. The passengers would never forget that flight. Neither would Emma and Michael. He finally stopped running from the sky.